So I just hit record. Yvette was wanting me to be sure I got record, so I'm thankful I remembered that. Uh, let's see here. So I'll do a share screen. Can you see that, Lori? Are you able to see my share screen, Lori? Or maybe I'll wait till Janie gets back.
I can see it.
Oh, good. Thank you, Mary Catherine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, maybe I'll say a quick prayer and start in here. Jesus, we love you. We thank you for your holy presence today. Thank you for your spirit upon each one. Heavenly Father, we just ask you to be with us today in your presence in this meeting and your guidance to learn about the signs in the heaven that you have shown and given us, Lord, and help us to understand these things that you've put in the scriptures, Lord. In your holy precious name, just ask for a clarity and help me to remember each point and to have a smooth flow. In Jesus' holy name, we give you thanks. Amen, amen. So, Jeannie, are you out there?
I'm right here.
Should I go ahead and start then?
Oh, yes, please.
Oh, there you are. Great.
Oh, I have to click this, don't I?
And you can see the share screen.
Let's see. Got it. Okay, there we go. Yes, I can.
Great. And you won't have to necessarily see anything here. I'll just be reading. So, first, I'll do a little review of some scriptures we covered last week, just a short review. So, Luke 21:25, and there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. And I think we covered last week how that word stars, plural, can also refer to constellations, as groupings of stars, plural. And there was no separate word for planets back in those days. Planets like Venus were considered along with bright stars. The Greek word was astron, astron, like our English word astronomy comes from that. So it's just the stars, planets, it was all kind of lumped in. And Genesis 1:14, then God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens. So the expanse of the heavens is talking about this whole circle of the sky above us at night, to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs. So there's the big part. Let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And this word for seasons, remember, was the Hebrew word for appointed times of meeting with the Lord. And these were, the main three were Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles, where every year all the Jews were to come down to the temple and be a part of these three annual feasts. So the sun and the moon and the stars and these lights play a part in these things. And then Psalm 19:1 for the choir director, a psalm of David. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. So as I said before, my picture of this was always just that, there's all these little stars out there going out and out and out, and that's what's just telling us, wow, this is amazing. But I think what we'll see is there's more to it than that. There's actually constellations and groupings and pictures that were given through all the different cultures, whether it's Hebrew, Babylon, Egypt. They all have a very similar 12 constellation kind of picture that was original and very similar. And so I believe that it's those pictures in the constellations that are what is declaring the work of his hands and telling a story, that God is telling a story through those constellations. Verse 2, day to day pours forth speech. And like I said before, I read this and I thought, wow, day to day it pours forth speech, and I've never heard a word it said, because I've never looked into this, and now that I'm looking into it, I'm seeing, wow, it really does. There really is speech that the heavens pour forth with these symbols and how it all plays together. And night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, there are no words. So when we look up there, the heavens, they're not speaking, there's no words, and yet they pour forth speech. So that sounds like a contradiction, but it just means they're pouring forth information, but it's not audible. It's symbolic. And we have to know the language. Like I said, when I was in Israel with Keith Johnson, we were up in the West Bank and came to that big sign in that said warning in big red letters in English, and then there was about 10 lines underneath it, but it was all Hebrew words. And so if you don't know the language, you don't know what you're reading. It doesn't convey anything to you. And so that's kind of what we're doing today, is trying to understand the symbolic language so that we can understand what God is saying. And I think we'll start to pick that up pretty quickly as we go through this. So there's no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth. So almost every culture across the globe has these pictures of the constellations and very similar names and very similar meanings in the various constellations. So their utterances are to the end of the world. In them he has placed a tent for the sun. So it's kind of like the sun is in the middle of these in a tent, as it were. So it's just a pictorial, thing again, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. It rejoices as a strong man to run his course. So the sun goes from constellation to constellation, and then when it makes its full circle, that's a whole year. So that's this bridegroom or this strong man running its course around the ecliptic. Its rising is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. And by the way, if anybody ever has a question, I really appreciated last week when I was talking about Coma Berenice, and everybody kind of jumped up and said, hey, wait a sec, I'm not getting this. So anytime I miss, anytime I'm not clear, I really want to know, because it's so much better to be clear and have it be something that can be understood. So like I say, jump in anytime with a question or hey, this is confusing or whatever. So, as I said, to understand the speech the heavens pour forth, we have to understand the language, since there's no audible speech in these signs. So now I'm going to stop this share and open a new share. So this is a Jewish Messianic website, and this is the Hebrew, what's called the Zodiac, although they kind of like to call it Mazzaroth. Zodiac can kind of have kind of a demonic, some people equate it with a bad thing, but it really means the same thing. So sometimes I might use the word Zodiac and other times Mazzaroth, but it's just talking about these 12, and you won't be able to see it very well in this picture, but here you can see Sagittarius. Here you can see Scorpio. Here's that snake, remember? And with the crow eating the snake. And this new constellation we call Janie's Basket. Just kidding there. And then, here's the head of the snake. And then Leo, the lion, is right here. Again, hard to see, but he's kind of reaching down, just ready to pounce on the head of that snake. Let me show you a better picture of that real quick. Sometimes
Is that Zeus? Is he the half man, half horse? Is that Zeus?
I don't know if I don't think it is. Sometimes they let's see here. How do I? Am I not sharing screen now?
No, you're not. Just us pictures.
Okay.
Now.
Okay, let me do share screen. And boy, it's hard to find the pictures for some reason. Let's see if this will get us there. What am I showing now?
Just what you had up before.
Okay, sorry. I guess I'm not going to be able to get to this other thing. I can't figure out how to get over there.
Well, there's one right here on the bottom. Go to the left. So it might be. There you go.
And what do you mean?
That's bigger.
Oh, you're seeing one now?
Yeah, that's larger.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, so it does allow me to. So let's see, where was that snake? Okay, it's over here. And see how Leo the lion, this is, by the way, the Hebrew Zodiac Mazzaroth, but see how Leo the lion is ready to pounce on this snake. And then you go around to these, it starts with Virgo, and then Libra is here, the two scales, and then the Scorpion, and Sagittarius is over here, and then Capricorn, and then the guy pouring out the water, Aquarius, which, the age of Aquarius, and then Pisces, remember, is the fish, one going up and one going along with the ecliptic. And then Aries is, you just see this little, see the lamb here, or the ram, I think it's the lamb, and then Taurus just kind of comes out of Aries.
Oh, yeah.
And then after Taurus is Gemini, which is normally thought of as the twins, and then Cancer, which is the crab, and then it ends with Leo.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how this kind of goes around. And then there's each of these 12 have 3 what are called decans. So each one is 30 degrees, and then there's 10 degrees each of decans. So they each have 3 kind of alternate. See, here is Coma. Remember, we've studied that a lot. It's upside down, but it was changed later to Coma Berenice because it's a way of hiding. There were certain people that didn't like this idea of a virgin bringing forth a child called the desired one. So let's hide that, and we'll change it to, like the devil was one that wants to hide it. Let's change that to Bernice's wig, and we'll just erase that all out. So in the new constellations, like the one I have, all you'll see is Coma Berenice. And when you go into Wikipedia, they hide a lot of stuff when it comes to real truth like this, and they obfuscate it and kind of confuse it. Any 10th grader that's doing a study on Coma Berenice would tell you that, hey, this used to be, for 1,500 years, it used to be a woman with a desired son. But Wikipedia doesn't tell you that. They just tell you about Coma Berenice, so it's like, why are you hiding things, So anyway, I'll go to this other site. Hopefully it sounds like, does this now come up with the other one?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, so the ancient zodiac begins with Virgo and ends with Leo. So that kind of makes sense. A virgin shall conceive. Jesus is the first and the last. So his story begins with Virgo, when the virgin conceives and brings forth the desired son, because that constellation of the desired son is in Virgo. It's one of the decans of Virgo. And then the constellation goes all the way around and comes back and ends with Leo, the lion. Now, as with most of the things with these constellations, certain forces always seem to be wanting to hide things and change things. So modern versions, you'll see, start with Aries and end in Pisces. But the old ones seem to have the other picture, starting with Virgo and ending with Leo. And they believe that the Sphinx is a bookmark. So the Sphinx is the head of a woman and the body of a lion. You've seen those old Egyptian Sphinx. Well, in the well, since I can share these pretty easily, let me try to do this. Can you see this picture? Okay, so here this goes around. This is a picture of the Esna zodiac, and it's on the floor of a temple in Egypt. And it has all these different 12 constellations, and then joining them is this woman with the body of a lion, which makes sense because you got Virgo here, the woman, and here the lion. And so they say that this is kind of a bookmark saying this is where things start with Virgo, and then this is where it ends with the Leo the lion. So just kind of interesting history, and if you dig deep enough, you can kind of find the truth in a lot of this stuff. So as this website says, these pictures are imposed on the stars, and the stories are attached to the pictures. So we got these 12 constellations on the ecliptic. representing the path of the sun over a year. Each one has 3 decans, i.e. side constellations near it. And these decans are always associated in the stories. In other words, so like with Virgo being a virgin, and we've studied that, how that's probably when Christ was born, when the sun was in Virgo and the moon under her feet. And one of the decans is Coma, not Coma Bernice, but Coma, the desired son. So it's another aspect of it is that there's a scripture that says God named all the stars. And if he named all the stars, it would make sense that he also named the constellations, because you really don't see these things unless somebody has shown, portrayed them to you in a picture. You can't look at Leo the lion and say, oh yeah, that's a lion. You'd never see it. But when God pointed it out to them, then they, by memory, Adam lived 1,000 years, and so for hundreds of years he's passing it down, and they're all passing it down to their sons and their sons. And so you get down to Job, and he's explaining all these things, as God is talking to Job as if Job understands these constellations. In fact, let's jump over there for a second. Can you see my writing now?
Mm-hmm.
My text?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. So Job has references to various stars and constellations. Job is the oldest book in the Bible, and even back then, God speaks to Job about the constellations, knowing these things were common knowledge back then to all the sons of Adam and being passed on down. And that means to all, Noah, and then to his 3 sons, that spread out and went out different ways. Mm-hmm. That's why all the different cultures have similar pictures of these 12. So they don't, nobody knows where it came from. They can't say, oh, it was, Joe Smith, or it was Noah. Nobody can do that, but yet they see the same thing or very similar pictures in all the different cultures. So it's kind of amazing. But like Stonehenge and most of the ancient places, like in Egypt where the pyramids are, they always show a very advanced understanding in astronomy, so way beyond what we would think. So God is speaking to Job here in Job 38:31. Remember when he's kind of chewing Job out because Job is not understanding some things. And God says to Job, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? So both of these are constellations. They're both what you would call decans. They're not main constellations, but they're I think, both of these are in Taurus. And so, so the point is that God speaks to Job. God couldn't say, can you bind the chains of Zazulio, who, if nobody knows what Zazulio is, you just, it's like Job is not confused. He knows what God is talking about when he mentions these things. So if you mention to anybody today, at least if you would have mentioned to me a couple of months ago, can I loosen Orion's belt? I'd have thought, what are you talking about? I don't have a clue what language you're speaking, And same thing about the binding the chains of the Pleiades. But let's go look at Orion's belt real quick. Is the star thing coming up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Let me get over to Taurus, the bull. So here's Taurus, and here's Orion right underneath.
Hmm.
So here's a decan in, and see these three stars are called Orion's belt,
Oh, yeah.
and so this is something that they haven't been able to phony up, because anybody can look up in the sky and see Orion's belt. And so even if the devil had wanted to change this to Lucy's garter or something, he can't, because everybody knew, no, this is Orion's belt. You're not going to change that. And then that comes right down here to Sirius. I don't know if I put my cursor on the dog's nose. Can you see that writing that comes up? It says Sirius.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I see
great.
it.
So that is also called the dog star, you'll hear. And the occult is real big on this. And we'll get into that in a minute. But just remember, here's Sirius, the dog star, Orion, and then coming right up into here is the bullhorns. Now the occult would want to see this as Baal. Remember, they do the Baal horns with their hands.
Yeah.
And so there's oftentimes when God paints a picture, the devil tries to paint it from his point of view. So, God has reasons for these things, and then they often try to change them, and we'll see more of how they have changed some things. But anyway, just showing you Orion's belt, and if you ever look up in the sky when this is coming across, you'll see, and then it points right down to the dog star. This picture here doesn't make it look like it does, but I guess in the this might be angled a little bit differently or something, but anyway, just kind of showing some of this. So God speaks to Job, knowing that there's no question Job understands what the Pleiades and what Orion are. I forgot to show you the Pleiades. I don't think it come up, but maybe if I can spell it right. They always change the spellings too.
I think the man with the horse body is Sagittarius.
Yes, you're right.
So it's not Zeus.
So when I zoom in, you can see these are the Pleiades. I don't think anything. It's a series. It's also called the Seven Sisters. In New York, there's 7 girls' schools that are called the Seven Sisters, and it's kind of named after this Pleiades. Did you ever hear of them, Lori? The Seven Sisters?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Isn't your wife one?
Yeah, she went to one of them. Yeah, my wife went to college at one of them. Mary, it's Mary Mount. Mary is involved, and so here's Meropa. Maybe that's what Mary Mount comes from. I don't know, but anyway, so it's another constellation in Taurus. So God is talking about these. Can you loosen Pleiades, or can you undo Orion's belt? And Job has to be humbled because he knows he can't change anything up there. And then another verse we see in Amos, and I'm just reading these scriptures just to kind of make it clear that they had a picture of all these constellations and all these things in their day. So Amos 5:8, and he's writing this book that's going to be, written and read by all the Jewish people, Amos the prophet. And in verse 5:8 he says, "He who made the Pleiades and Orion and changes deep darkness into morning, who also darkens day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the surfaces of the earth. Yahweh is his name," or the Lord, all caps, is his name. And then Job 9:8, "Who alone stretches out the heavens." So he stretches out this whole circle of the heavens. And verse 9, "Which maketh Arcturus, Orion, and the Pleiades." Arcturus is another star. And another interesting thing that has kind of helped where certain people can't change the names of these constellations and things is these individual stars have names. And so you'll see there's the Arabs have star names. Like, I forget what Arcturus means, but let's just say it means warrior. I don't know, but I'm just picking something. In Hebrew, and then you look and the name is different in Arab, but it also means warrior. Well, okay, now you know that, okay, it's being preserved, but they call it different names here and there. And so that's another way to, track some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Greek lexicon changes the order and the name a little bit. Pleias, so that'd be the Pleiades, and Hesperus, that has to do with the evening star. So I'm not sure what they're getting at. Hesperus is, I think, as I remember, it's kind of a Greek word for evening. So I think it's, Orion might have an evening star in it or something like that. And Arcturus, NAS says the bear, Orion, and Pleiades. So some of these things, they're not quite sure what it's supposed to be. And then Job 26:13, "By his breath the heavens are cleared. His hand has pierced the fleeing serpent." Remember that one constellation is called the fleeing serpent or the crooked serpent. So a lot of these scriptures come to life when you realize they have these pictures in their mind that God had given them. And so the King James says, "His hand hath formed the crooked serpent." And you think, well, why does God make these pictures of a bad thing like a serpent? And it's because he's painting the picture of what happened, what he knows is going to happen throughout time. And, certain things, like the one scripture we talked about in Genesis where it says his heel will crush your head, and your head will bruise his heel. Well, there's a couple different pictures in the Mazzaroth that show this, where a certain hero has his foot on the snake, and then his other foot is bruised, kind of thing. Joseph Seiss, in his book Gospel and the Stars, thinks this refers to Hydra, this crooked serpent, which Barnes Notes says there can be no doubt that Job refers here to the constellations. So, and that Job 41:1 refers to Cetus. So that's another decan, another side constellation, Cetus. Job 41:1, "But will you catch the serpent with a hook and put a halter about its nose?" So that's the lexicon. the Greek translation. The NIV says, can you pull in a leviathan with a fishhook or tie down its tongue with a rope? So anyway, just going through these different pictures. So as I said before, it's important to know that the scripture says it was God who named the stars, and hence the constellations could be included in that same plural word. It's the Greek word astron. And some of these names and meanings have come down to us. So Psalms 147:3, and God often connects the stars to humans, to us saints. We shine light, we have light of Christ, and so we're stars. And of course the devil has those that he calls stars, in the movies. You're a star. So as usual, he takes the false and tries to make his people stars, when in God's eyes it's the believers who are the true stars that have the light and shed forth that light. So here's another scripture where he kind of seems to connect the saints with the stars. So Psalm 147:3, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And then the very next verse says, he counts the numbers of the stars. He gives names to all of them. So if God is that intimate with the stars where he gives names to all of them, how much more does he know our name and know everything about us and, want to heal the brokenhearted in all of us, all we have to do is keep drawing near to him, and he will heal. He will bind up our wounds. So I'll just read this. This is so the stars only point to what we shall be. They're just a type of how we will. It says every star differ in glory, so is the resurrection. And as much as we imbibe, that is how much we will shine forth for all eternity. And the Bible says it's not always an easy walk, that we have. 2 Corinthians 1:4, speaking of God who comforteth us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. For just as the sufferings of Christ are ours in abundance, so also our comfort is abundant through Christ. Whether we be afflicted, it is for your consolation and salvation, which is effectual in the enduring of the same sufferings which we also suffer. And whether we be comforted, it is for your consolation. That Greek word consolation is usually translated comfort. So I switched over to NAS here in the next verse. Our hope for you is firmly grounded, knowing that as you are sharers of our sufferings, so also are you sharers of our comfort. For we do not want you to be unaware, brethren, of our affliction which came to us in Asia, that we were burdened excessively. So this is Paul and Timothy. And Paul says, beyond our strength. So they were burdened excessively beyond our strength, so that we despaired even of life. So think of that. That's the Apostle Paul. You don't hear him talking like that too often, but, he was going through certain trials. And I think there's another verse that says he wrestled with brute beasts in Asia, meaning, Christians that were being hard on him, I think, or Jews, whether non-believers or believers. But anyway, whoever it was, he was wrestling with these brute beasts and getting wounded, and he just got to a point where he despaired even of life. Anyway, so that's just a little sidebar to hopefully bring encouragement to anybody who may need it. So back to our study. So we have seen that the devil has been successful in hiding God's pictorial story in the heavens by changing certain things. So in our archaeological dig today, we want to get back to the roots wherever possible. And so I've already covered this, Coma Berenice, and how it was changed by Ptolemy back in the old days. So I covered that in part 1. It's kind of a long story, so I won't go into that whole deal again. But in a nutshell, the Coma is a decan of Virgo. It's one of the small constellations, sub-constellations of Virgo, and it means the desire of all nations. So Haggai 2:7 says, "And I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come." So they had this picture of the desire of all nations, and Haggai is saying, hey, we've waited a long time, year after year after year, and the Messiah has not come, but don't give up hope. This picture that is painted in the skies by God, this will come. But then in 300 BC, it was changed to Bernice's wig. Bernice's hair, long hair. So they tried to hide that. And we covered that in part 1, like I said. So cruising on down here, the story begins in Virgo. And we know that Christ is the first and he is the last. And all things came into being by him. So this is another picture of the constellations. All these pictures came into being not as he sat there and wadded up the balls and threw them up there and they became stars, but the Greek word is dia, and it means, in this case, the reason why something happens, or because of, or for the sake of. So all things came into being because of him, for the sake of him. So the Virgo constellation and the sub-constellation Coma, the woman with child, the desired one, that was because of Christ. God put that picture and created it up in the sky. So we'll talk about this winged disc for a minute. The sun would often, as it's going along in this ecliptic, watch Mars here, see if I can get this to... Okay, so tell me if you can see Mars kind of going forward, and it's going to go right into the bullhorns. And just like here came the moon just zipping ahead. So here's the moon here. If I start going hours, well, it's going to disappear if I do that, but in a couple hours the moon will be right here in the middle. Well, the sun also comes right here through the Taurus horns. And so there's a lot of history on what that might mean, and we have all these occult pictures that have come down through time, and also some of them are godly pictures. And so here, this is called the winged disc. Assyrian rulers considered it a symbol of royalty. Its importance was expressed in the words sol suis, or in Latin, literally, his own self, the sun. So it's kind of like the sun is coming, going along through the sky, pictured as flying. And then here we have Isis. And remember that in Egypt, that woman with child, or virgin with child, they changed it to Isis with child, with Horus. So this is in the Egyptian museum, this picture of Isis with the desired child Horus. And here she is wearing this sun disk. Now, some scholars say that whenever you see this sun disk like this, it refers to Saturn in the Egypt hieroglyphics. But there's debate back and forth what it might mean. They're not all positive, and you'll also see it in all the Freemason. You'll see a flying disc in a lot of Freemason halls. So the occult and dark side are really into this. Genesis 14:5, and in the 14th year of Chedorlaomer, the kings, this is when the Sodomites, just before Abraham delivers Lot from these Sodomites, but there was this war, and it says they came and defeated the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim. And the Hebrew for Ashtaroth Karnaim is Ashtaroth of the double horns. So this is similar to, here's the double horns, and Isis kind of comes down and becomes the goddess Ashtaroth later. So there's all this interplay and stuff. And so when you look on a map, a Bible map of Ashtaroth Karnaim, you see here's Ashtaroth and here's Karnaim, and it's right in between the double horns. Right? Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So this map has them as two, but you can see up here it's kind of joined. It's Ashtaroth Karnaim, so it's kind of right in this region here, between the double horns.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yep. So Josiah was 8 years old when he became king. Pretty amazing. You think, what a little brat. Most people, I mean, when you become a king at 8 years old, I mean, what are the odds that you will become a good man later? I mean, you'd really have to have somebody guiding you along, because you can get whatever you want. Me want ice cream, or whatever you want, But he was really a special individual. And in the 8th year of his reign, so he was 16 now, while he was still a youth, he began to seek the God of his father David. So just think of that. And in the 12th year, he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of the high places and the Asherim and the carved images. Now the Asherim are these cultic poles, that were like the phallic, and that goes way back also, like the Washington Monument, that the dark side always wants to put up, and like the is also in the Vatican. They have a big phallic right in the middle of, their whole deal. There's 3 of them in the world. One's in London, I guess, 3 main ones. So this kind of comes back down to Ashtarte. Asherah is the cultic pole. So God says, you shall not plant for yourself an Asherah of any kind, or of any kind of a tree beside the altar of the Lord your God. So they would, when they fell away, they would kind of get in darkness and go into these kind of things that they would pick up from Babylon and Egypt, the Israelites at times. So Asherah was the goddess of fertility and thus represented the Babylonian Ishtar. And by the way, I hope this, isn't, I hope, you kind of have to touch on the dark side a little bit, because that's a part of the whole story, to be able to interpret, these signs as things are going around in the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm doing this, but I'll get through this in a minute.
So these Asherah poles are all the ones that they reference throughout the Bible when they're being taken down.
Yes.
The Jews are taking them down because God
Yep.
told them to do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they would go cut them down, right?
Yeah.
And so the existence of numerous symbols, in each of which the goddess was believed to be immanent, led to the creation of numerous forms of the goddess herself, which after the analogy of the Ashtaroth were described collectively as Ashtarim. So anyway, and then it comes down to Ishtar, and then Easter in English. So, Easter is the same thing, the goddess of fertility with bunnies and eggs, and, so it's the same thing coming. We always have this female goddess. And in America, she was known as Columbia in the early days. In fact, as I remember, if my memory is correct, America was called Columbia first, and then they decided to change it because they were getting a little too ahead of themselves, and they didn't want to be too obvious on things. So here we come to so one part of this story is that Isis, her husband Osiris, got chopped up by this guy into 14 pieces. And so this is, like I say, it gets a little bit convoluted here, but just try to stick with it here. So Osiris, Isis's husband, who was going to bring forth Horus, the all-seeing eye, the one eye, who is also known as the god of silence. So you'll see all the Hollywood guys doing a 666 with the eye symbol like this, around their eye, and then they'll also do the shush, because that's a shout out to Horus, the god of silence. In Greek, Horus was called Harpocrates. And so we come down and we have the Marx brothers, and we have Harpo, who is the silent. He's mute. He can't speak. So that's where that comes from, Harpo. Anyway, so in Egypt, Osiris, the husband, was cut into 14 pieces, I think by this guy named Set, another god. And Isis went and found all 13 pieces, but they couldn't find his male member. And they said a fish ate it. So you have, I know it. So you have these different, no, this is real. I'm telling you, it's real history. It sounds bizarre.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you have these, so that's why the Pope has his fish hat. It's the big open mouth fish. It all ties in together. They live this stuff. Anyway, so when America started, we had 13 colonies, right? And all of a sudden, guess what? Well, Philadelphia was the capital of the 13, colonies, as it were. And whenever the controllers want something to happen, poof, there's a big problem. Well, guess what? They had a big insurrection at the Capitol in Philadelphia. And so, oh, golly gee, we've got to move the capital because we had an insurrection here, and it's, golly gee, it's dangerous. We got to go move it. So they moved the capital and they cut out, I believe it's 100 square miles in between Virgin and Mary. So here's Virginia and here's Maryland. And so you've got the Virgin Mary, and then what else do you notice here? The double horns, right? Here's the capital, right here, and here you see these double horns. Well, you're seeing why we had to move the capital, and then we put the Washington Monument, the big phallic, right here in between the double horns. And we're supposed to believe this was all done by the God Bless America founders, but if you and I were there, I don't think we would have said, hey, let's move it here in between the double horns and put up a big phallic symbol. And all the other stuff that they put in, you know, the 5-pointed star, and the Pentagon also has a 5-pointed star to Venus. But anyway, here it is, right in between the double horns. Same picture. Now, WikiLeaks found this picture of Podesta, who was Hillary's campaign manager. A very evil and dark individual, but most of them are in these realms. They portray a warm and fuzzy on the outward, but you can go, you know, probably a search of Google and just look under Podesta for his art in his home, and he's got little children tied up in paintings, and another little boy pointing to a statue of a little boy pointing to a man's private part. I mean, just the most, and they just put it right out there, you know. So you're talking about, and he was involved in this Planet Pizza and all this, you know. So we're almost through this, but I just want you to know there's a very dark element. So people were wondering, well, what's he talking about with this 14 and the fish? What could that possibly mean? That he's emailing to his little group of friends as they're getting ready for another of their parties. Well, he's signaling what is going to be going on. And it's very dark. So anyway, as we said, the ancients were very focused on the ecliptic, and God has his paintings, but the occult is always trying to get in and change it to their thing. But often planets would often show up in the bullhorns. So let me go to, I want to go to our Starry Night software and show you a picture, and we'll see if the heavens are pouring forth speech on the day of Christ's ascension. But before, I got to introduce you to a couple of the planets first. And some of this will seem a little bizarre at first, but let me just introduce you to Mercury. And, you know, like I say, every movie has a few stars where, okay, so I'm going to introduce you to a couple of movie stars. And they're not always good guys. If you're watching a movie, sometimes one's a good guy and one's a bad guy kind of thing. Mercury has an 88-day orbit, say some. Some say it's 3 Earth months, but it's about 88 days. Mercury is the 201st element. If you remember Bill Gates and Event 201, it was to prepare for a corona outbreak. It was about 6 months before the actual corona outbreak, and Event 201 was a simulation by him. In the all the big groups, John Hopkins and all these places, it was a simulation event. Like, oh golly gee, what would we do if we had a big corona outbreak? And then 6 months later, we actually had it. But they can do this stuff and get away with it because nobody is paying attention for the most part. And because they control the media so completely. So Albert Pike, who was like the highest Freemason, just, you can't get much higher than him. They actually have a statue in Washington, D.C., not for Christ. They don't have one for him, but for Albert Pike, they do have one. And in his book, Morals and Dogma, he says that their blazing star that you'll often see in Freemason lodges, it's a blazing star between the two pillars of the temple, Jachin and Boaz. He says it epitomizes Sirius, remember we saw the dog star nose, Anubis, and Mercury, guardian and guide of souls. So they had a picture that, and then let me read about Anubis. Wikipedia says one of the prominent roles of Anubis was as a god who ushered souls into the afterlife. So if you picture souls leaving heaven, then Mercury and Anubis and Sirius were all connected with these souls leaving and going up. And that's in their occult picture. They're saying they have, the power over the thing. But it's interesting that they're picturing it in that region. And then the Freemason stairway to heaven connects with the dog star Sirius. Remember, Jacob had that dream where he saw a stairway that went up to heaven and the angels ascending and descending. Well, in the Freemason, they also have that same picture because they feel like they're going to get their stairway to heaven. And it's kind of like Nimrod, who built the temple. They're going to do it their way, kind of thing. And I'll just be quick on these two planets, and then we'll jump into it. Well, we'll go three, really. But so Venus is kind of interesting because the dark side loves it, and it's also a picture of Christ. So, like with many of these things, some of them kind of have a double meaning, as it were. So Venus, and remember, it's just a star, but they give the names to these stars. The dark side always names everything. Venus was also the name of Ashtaroth. In America, she's called Columbia. In the past, this goddess has also been known as Isis, Ishtar, Aphrodite, and Venus. She is symbolized as a pentagram and a shell. So that's why Rockefeller has shell oil. It's a shout out to Venus. And the dark side, when they give over to Satan, he does pour out many blessings. So Rockefeller has immense wealth because he's given over to this dark side and lets it be known by, the names of his companies. So anyway, that's some of the occult view of Venus. Now, it's the brightest planet of all, and it was also called the morning star. Therefore, Jesus is called the bright and morning star. And it's in Revelation 2:28, it says that he gives the morning star to overcomers. So this morning star, was used for navigation and people needing to know where to go, whether they're in ships or whatever. This early morning star would let them know which way they're headed, and it's easy to get lost if you don't have a picture in the heavens to help guide you. Uh, and so, as we say, Satan was also called the morning star when he was Lucifer. Well, Lucifer's just a pictorial name, but when he was unfallen, he was pictured as the morning star before he fell away. We see that in Isaiah 14:12. And this is probably why the occult loves Venus, because he's kind of identified as Satan also. And so in the Church of Satan, you'll see that five-pointed star as their logo. And Venus makes this five-pointed star every 8 years. And what that means is as it's spinning around the sun, and as the earth is spinning around a little slower, or maybe it's faster, I get mixed up on that, but they connect with each other exactly 5 times, making a perfect five-pointed star. And so that's where we got the picture of a star being a five-pointed thing. I thought I had that here, but I don't. But I'll show it to you in another area. Jupiter is known as a good planet. It's the planet of kings, the planet of righteousness, and it's often a picture of the Messiah in the Hebrew. And the Hebrew name is Zedek, which means righteous. It takes about 12 or 13 years to complete its orbit. And you remember that song Aquarius?
Mm-hmm.
It says, when the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars. Mars is known as the war planet, if I'm remembering correctly. Does anybody know that? Is Mars the red planet? I think it is. I think it's the one that's known as the war planet.
I think it's known as red. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know the war, but
Yeah, if it's red, it's the war one.
mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of saying when Jupiter aligns with Mars. Now the dark side probably pictures that when this good guy Jupiter finally gets with it and aligns with our war side, then peace will guide the planets and love will guide the stars. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. So I'll be jumping around a little bit, but the age of Pisces started around the time of Christ, and all the astronomers, will admit and know this. And each one is about 2,000 years long. So Pisces is just ending, which is the church age, is picturing as just ending. And I got those notes in the other deal, so I get ahead of myself at times, but just trying to give you a picture of Pisces is the 2 fish, and that is the Christian age. And so when the age of the Gentiles is up, the Bible talks about, and we're in that time where that's just about happening. Saturn Jupiter conjunctions always betoken some great event, says Seiss in his Gospel in the Stars. So he's gone back and looked in history, and I believe there was a time before Christ, like 7 AD or something, 7 BC, when Jupiter and Saturn had a conjunction. And so he's saying some big thing always happens after that. Now let me talk to you about Saturn, and then we'll get back to our thing. Saturn, if there's a bad guy in the whole story, Saturn is it. Saturn is the second largest of the planets in our system. It's the 6th planet from the sun. It has 6 sides and 6 points on its north pole. So this is a picture of Saturn's north pole, and you can see here it's this, it has a hexagon like this. Let's see, there's another picture that's better. Let me see if I can find this other picture real quick. Okay, here it is. So is this showing up?
Yeah.
So this is comes from Wikipedia, and it's Saturn's hexagon is the name of this Wikipedia article, and you see this six-sided thing on the north pole of Saturn. Kind of an odd thing, isn't it? And so in astrology, Saturn and the Sun are enemies. So that's kind of another, all you need to know is the Sun is often pictured as either Christ or God, and Saturn is the enemy. And so you have this picture. Some of the ancients saw Saturn as the supreme god. You know, that's kind of what they wanted. And this black cube is often represented in Hollywood as a prison system and as this 666 grid system. And I want to give credit to James, Yvette's husband, James Green, because him and I used to have coffee in Tacoma. And one day we were looking out over across the street at the courthouse, and there's this square box kind of outside the courthouse. And I said, somehow we got talking about it. I think I asked James if he knew what it was, and he said, oh yeah. He said Saturn, and he told me a little bit about this. Saturn is the square box. So you'll see this. There's a whole cult that worships this. Here it is in Australia, Denmark, Manhattan, Santa Ana, all these different places in Manhattan. You see this square box, and oftentimes it's on an angle because if you, well, let me show you another picture here, better one. If you take this top of Saturn and put a little deal on it, it's the exact same thing, but it just has this three-pole thing. It turns it into a three-dimensional square. And square is real big in the Freemasons because they're, you know, often using square blocks, you know, as the builders, you know, build out. And I can't say I have all knowledge by any means, I don't, but, and then you see the star, what we're told is the Star of David, which is these triangle pyramids, as two triangles, as above and as below, as above and as below, joined together. And when you form these two triangles together, you have this Saturn in the middle, this six-pointed deal. Or if you put the little thing in, you can picture it as this square on its side. So we don't have to understand everything about this, but we want to at least see that they understand it and they know what they're doing, and they're using it in all these places. Here's some more. In Mecca, you know, the Muslims are led into this, having this square, big square thing. And, you know, I don't know if they even know where it came from. If anybody knows, they could tell me, but this is where they go in Mecca, you know, they every year, you know, they, or however long, Here's one in Australia. Here's the Apple Store, has their square cube in New York City. They have a clear one. And so coming down here, so we're told, go ahead, Jeannie, or did somebody
no, I was just kind of reading that out loud, that one is in Denmark.
Oh yeah, right. So we're told this is the Star of David, and it's on the Israeli flag, but like America, they're led along also by the dark side. There's lots of good people that love God, just like in America, but the rulers are those who have given over and rule with the money, and so they make the decisions about what goes on the flag and those kinds of things. So, talking about the Star of David in Wikipedia, it says it's the shape of a hexagram, the compound of two equilateral triangles. So God in Acts 7:43 says in the scriptures, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch, the star, the astron of your god Remphan, figures which you made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. So because they fell away into this worship of Saturn and the hexagram and all these things, God says he's going to carry them away to Babylon. McClintock and Strong say that Remphan is rendered Saturn in the Syriac. So here's that bad guy Saturn again. Was compared with the Arabic and Persian Kewan, the planet Saturn. So we're seeing this bad guy Saturn show up in all this cult that hides things and that controls the money. BDAG also says Saturn, a deity worshipped by some Israelites. And then Amos also talks about this. Amos 5:26. But you have borne the tabernacle of Moloch and Chion, your images, the star of your god which you made to yourselves. So Chion here, same thing, an image or pillar, probably a statue of the Assyrian or Babylonian god of the planet Saturn. So we're starting to learn who some of these players are. Freeberg, Analytical Greek Lexicon, same thing, a pagan deity thought to be the Egyptian name for the Roman god Saturn, worshipped by some Israelites, and then he gives Acts. So now I'll show you something really interesting, and now that we understand some of the players, we'll zoom over to is the screen share working here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's showing the stars? The planets?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So let's go look. We're going to go on the Ascension Day. Now, not everybody, in fact, I don't even know if I've heard anybody talk about what day is the Ascension Day. But in the Messianic Feast book, there's a section where I dug into this because I had to find a day when there was a full moon when Christ would have been crucified. And I believed, and since we know the temple was destroyed on 70 AD, right at the Passover, I thought that is a big proof that it was 30 AD when Christ was crucified. A lot of people say 31, 32, 33, or 30, or even down to 27. But the only time that really makes sense is 30 AD, because on April 6th that year was a full moon. And so that would make sense with Christ being crucified then and then raising 3 days later and then ascending. Remember, he walked among them for 40 days. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to look and see what the heavens tell us on that ascension day. And I think you'll find this kind of interesting. Okay, so here we are in Jerusalem on May 18th, which if you take April 6th and add 3 days and then 40 days, that's what you come to, is May 18th. Now, notice where the sun is. It's right in the bullhorns. So that's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there every day. I'm just going to bend this around a little if I can. Sometimes these things are hard to drive. Yeah, it's going to be a pain, so let me...
You're getting there.
It's so bizarre. I don't know how it does that, but sometimes when you least want it to... Oh, here we go. Okay, so now you remember some of our players, and this is the Ascension Day when Christ left earth and went up into heaven. And so his victory over death, hell, and the grave, he ascended right up. And so the picture would be he came right by Sirius, right by Orion, and right by into the bullhorns and into heaven, as it were. And the sun was right there waiting for him, or it pictures him coming through. If I go 2 more days ahead, or 3 days ahead, he's no longer in the bullhorns. But if you come back to May 18th, then the sun is there in the bullhorns. But look also, 2 of our players are right here. It's kind of like Saturn and Mercury, of all places that they could be. It's like they're standing guard saying, wait a sec, we control the death and the dead. Because remember, Mercury is a guide for the dead souls. And so Mercury and Saturn are going along this ecliptic, but the heavens seem to portray. So here's Saturn is in Gemini. We'll get into Gemini in a little bit, but I believe, and most of the guys, like that really are into this and they're Christian, believe that the Gemini, the 2 twins, started out being Adam and Eve, but then it pictures Christ and the church, who would also picture Christ and his bride, or Christ and the man-child, as twins. So you could look at it any of the above. So Saturn is kind of like in that constellation, saying, hey, I don't want anything to happen over here. I'm standing guard. Mars is here in Taurus, and so this is what the heavens look like on that day of the ascension. Let's see if there's anything else I was going to mention. I think you saw the moon go through there too. Let's see. Shift. Yeah, see, here comes the moon. So this is 2 days later. The moon is right here. it's the new moon. So just as the 2 days after the ascension, the new moon is coming through. Just kind of interesting. Let me show you something else that you might find interesting. So here's Venus up here. Where'd Venus go? I thought I saw her a minute ago. I'm just laughing because my... Oh, there we go. Okay, I can move it. Okay, so on this Ascension Day, so I'm back on May 18th, Venus is here with the Lamb, Aries. So that's kind of interesting that Venus would be here in this, is picturing Christ as the lamb, and then Taurus, the bull, comes out of the lamb. Taurus, you don't have its whole body, you just have the upper body, as it were, and they say that that's kind of a picture of Taurus coming out of the lamb. And here's the new moon is right here in Taurus. And as we saw a couple days later, it goes right through here. But let me show you something interesting with Venus. It has this really weird orbit. If I can get this thing to act right here. Some days it... Okay, let's go like this again. Okay, so here's Venus. So watch Venus. I'm going to hold down my finger on the days. So it's just going to go one day to the next. And you'll see that Venus has this weird, what they call retrograde. And a lot of the planets have this. And it'll come along like my cursor. And then it'll swing around and it'll act like it's coming in reverse. And they say that it really doesn't do that, but it looks that way. From us looking at Earth, it actually looks like it's going backwards, but that's only because of the motion of Earth and the planets and the way everything works.
Optical illusion.
Yeah, exactly. So keep your eye on Venus for a second here. You'll see it catch up to the sun, and then somewhere there goes Mercury. Mercury was starting to pass it, and then it had a retrograde. There's another. Did you see Mercury go back behind it again? Here comes Mercury again. Now it's going backwards. See down here?
Yeah.
Venus always seems to have a retrograde except when I want it to. Okay, there we go.
There we go, yeah.
So there's just these strange things, and this is accurate. So now your Venus is catching up with Mars, getting ready to have a... And now watch, Mars will probably come catch up to it. But anyway, that's just one more thing I wanted to point out. And part of important dates and the heavens pouring forth knowledge is when you have these conjunctions. like we just were having there. See Mercury there underneath Venus? So
Yeah.
here's Mercury, here's Venus. So watch as I go a couple days, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, you get a conjunction where they're right in line with each other. And oftentimes that has some meaning, especially when it's Jupiter. And when it's Jupiter, who is the Messiah or the righteous planet, is battling with Saturn in a conjunction, that, Seiss says that betokens some big event to come. So,
Is that what we saw last year? I watched it with my little, my little star thing to where they aligned. Was it Jupiter and Saturn that aligned?
you're right, and I can't remember. Let me see. I think I might have that in my... Because it happens again in 2024, whatever. Yeah, Venus and Jupiter. So
Oh, okay, not
it
Saturn, Venus and Jupiter. Okay.
yeah, and that happened in in I think it was 2020, and then it happens again in 2024. So let's look at that real quick. So here, let me get rid of the. So this here is the landscape, as it were. I forget what it's called. I'm going to hide it. It's the horizon. When you see this line.
Okay.
And this is the ecliptic, where the sun goes up and then comes down. So here's Venus. I'm not going to change the date, but I'm assuming that Jupiter is right underneath it. Sometimes they're so close that it won't even show you one of them until you get it right to the right place. Huh.
What is this AERGA? I'm not sure if I'm spelling that accurately. AUR.
Auriga?
Yeah, what is that?
I'm not sure about that one. We'll see that later, though.
Okay, no worries.
For some reason, well, let me see. I'll find Jupiter. I'm thinking that Jupiter is right under this Venus thing. Yeah, see?
Yeah, there it is. There it is to the right. Yeah.
Yeah. So now Jupiter and Venus, you can see there's a conjunction, and here's the sun. So that's kind of incredible to have it right there with the sun on May 22nd. So that,
Of 2020?
2024.
Oh,
But yes,
okay,
there-
up and coming. Yeah.
but there was one in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I could go back to that. So here's 2020. I don't know when it was, so I'll just go to. So here's Jupiter. I'll just go month by month until Venus shows up. Tell me if you see Venus in any of these.
Okay.
Here's Jupiter and Saturn getting pretty close.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was Jupiter and Saturn, but I don't know.
So I'm going day by day now. There goes the moon zipping by. So here is Jupiter and Saturn. They don't seem to want to change their position a whole lot. I'm trying to get Jupiter to, but I guess Saturn is faster, so Jupiter is not gonna. And this is 2020. So, well, yeah, you could be right, Jeannie. Let's see. Let me go backwards.
Because they're getting closer and closer.
As I go backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So this is April 2020. See if I can get them to align a little better.
Oops. There they are. There. You just passed it.
No, because here's Jupiter here, and Saturn's down here.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't figure out why. Doesn't matter which way I go, I can't seem to get them. So not maybe one of them's in retrograde right in here or something. I did a month and that threw it. So Jupiter and Saturn, is that what we were looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I can't seem to get them together. So here comes Jupiter closing in. I'm going forward day by day. But now watch, Saturn just kind of takes off.
Yeah, there it goes.
Starting to catch up now. And then Saturn starts moving again. So, yeah, I don't think there's, I could Google it, that's another, see now it looks like Jupiter's going retrograde a little bit, going backwards. See it? It should be going forward because I'm going forward on the days. Okay, here we go. There, look at that. Okay, so that's December of 2020. Can you see that, Jeannie?
She left.
Saturn, no, I'm here. Saturn and Jupiter.
Yeah, let's see if I twist it around, see if I can get Jupiter to show up again. They're right on top of each other. Sometimes when that happens, oh, see how it's Jupiter now? Now watch, I go a little bit over. Oh, I thought it was saying Saturn before.
It only lasted for, it was very brief. It was like a few days, I thought. Maybe it was a week. But.
Yeah, so I'm not moving anything now, so the time is frozen. I'm going to hit Saturn, find Saturn, and it'll pop up. It's right under the Jupiter. So they're that close to each other.
Yeah.
See? See them there?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So that happened. So if Zeiss is right, then Saturn and Jupiter conjunctions betoken some big thing about to happen. It doesn't mean that it's the next year, but 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, a big event. So this is kind of interesting. Saturn has a 30-year cycle, so it's right here only every 30 years. Jupiter has a faster, so it's every 12 years, 12 or 13. but it's almost like the Messiah and the devil are facing off.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I wanted to show you this other one. So, and we'll probably, maybe I'll save this one. This is a good one. Let's see. So that might be one we look at again later. But since we've been talking about Aquarius, let's open that one. So I was looking for something that might fulfill it. And I do all these from Jerusalem because I figure, you know, that's kind of the picture. So when the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns with Mars, that's the dawning of the age of Aquarius. So this is picturing in 2026, which, you know...
Are you going to sing for us?
Huh?
Are you going to sing it for us? The age of Aquarius?
Well, I had to in my... oh, that's a long story. You won't think so well of me if I tell you that, but my... I had this German lady for a teacher, and I was kind of always getting in trouble, and I was getting a D. Well, she said she'd give me a C if I sang in the choir at the end of the year, and this was our song was the dawning of the age of Aquarius. So, so this has special meaning to me. But
did she pass you then?
No, it's pretty bad. Oh boy, you're gonna think bad of me. I probably shouldn't tell you this story, but
I already know you were a rabble rouser, Al, so
well, let's just say we had made our own wine the day before, and this is our 9th grade graduation, and so, you know, a bunch of us kind of were not in the best of shape and didn't smell too good either, and I think she got mad about that. So instead of giving me a C like she promised, she flunked me. But, so yeah, this has always had special meaning, this song. So let's see, what were we looking at when Jupiter aligns with Mars, right? Isn't that what I said? Let's see, why am I not seeing that? Okay, here's Jupiter. So let's see if Mars is underneath it. Yep, see? Jupiter and Mars. Now, they're not quite in line with the ecliptic, but they are pretty well in line with the horizon. So I don't know which is which as far as being an actual conjunction.
I don't see them. I don't see it.
Can you see up here where I'm circling? Can you see?
I don't see your cursor, I guess.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I have the screen, expanded a little bit, so I just reduced it down.
Oh.
So where's your
So you see this?
Oh, okay. Yes. So now I know where to look.
So follow me here. It goes out here to here.
Okay. Yeah, I see it. Yep.
Okay, so there's Mars and Jupiter. And you can see them kind of in aligning with the horizon line of
Yeah.
Earth.
Yeah. What date was that? Do you have? Was that?
November 19th,
Oh,
2026.
up right up there.
So
Okay.
this is coming.
Coming. Okay.
So if we look at that December 30th or whatever it was of 2020, which is almost 2021, you could say, something interesting might happen in 5 years from now, which would be 2026 or 6 years, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
4 years.
from 2020, right?
Oh,
Wasn't
then it would be 6. Yeah. Of course.
it? And so when the moon is in the seventh house, so the moon has to be in the seventh house, which doesn't happen every day of the week. So the seventh house, if we count Virgo as the first, which we have said, and our best believers also believe the story starts with Virgo, then Pisces would be the seventh house. And remember, that fits because we're going from Pisces into the age of Aquarius. So let's go and see where the moon is. So it's not in Leo. It's not in Virgo. Although Venus is in Virgo. So when this big thing is happening, Venus is with the Virgin. Kind of interesting. The sun is in Libra. So the picture here is the scales. God is weighing, seeing which way people are going to go.
Mm.
You can kind of read different language into this.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the moon just entering Pisces. So the moon is in the seventh house when Jupiter and Mars, when the moon is in the seventh house. See how the moon here, I don't know if you can see, it's in Pisces.
Mm-hmm. And Jupiter.
So this is the only one I could find that seems to fit. Now, this is not just a rock music song that somebody, invented in their garage.
Mm.
Usually, when it's something major like that, they are given the lyrics and they're said, okay, this is your song you're going to sing. Because the occult always put their stuff out there ahead of time.
Mm.
So they very well may have plans for this period. Another thing I always like to look is on the Jewish calendar. So let's see, November 19th, 2026. I think I looked at this already and there wasn't anything special. So, yeah, nothing real special here. Except, oh, well, I won't go into that, but. So, anyway, it isn't every day that Jupiter aligns with Mars, and then it definitely wouldn't be every day that it happens when the moon is in the seventh house, Pisces. So let's see where our buddy Saturn is at. Oh, look, I didn't even think of that, but here Saturn is here too. He's saying, wait a second, you Christians, I don't want, I'm done with you. His focus is on the Christian and ending that. So kind of interesting that on this day, Saturn is also in Pisces.
Hmm.
And Neptune is too. We haven't gone into that yet. But anyway, just talking about how the heavens pour forth speech and signs in the heavens, I think we're going to see more and more of these kind of things. So there's 3 minutes left. Let me see what else might be fun to look at. Here's our conjunction over here again.
Mars and Jupiter.
Yep. So I never did get into the Ascension Day, did I?
No. Don't the
taught-
Catholics have a day of Ascension?
I don't know. But I doubt it's May 18th. But one thing I forgot to mention, so let's see, why is this not May 18th, Ascension Day, Sun and Taurus sign. Oh, I know what I was thinking. It's the day of Pentecost. Let me zip over there real quick. So this is the day of Pentecost when the Holy Spirit would have fell, if my calculations are right. So this would have been see if I can find it here. Okay, Pentecost, that crucifixion year. See if the heavens are telling us anything here. So we see Saturn is here with the twins, kind of like okay, you Christ in the church, we don't want anything happening over here, kind of thing. But the sun is also coming in to the twins, Christ in the church, or Christ in the man-child, whatever, and the Holy Spirit being poured out. Venus is here with the bull. Now, what I thought was interesting is, if I can remember this right, so remember the moon was under her feet when Christ was born. Now the moon is just entering Virgo's head. Now that doesn't happen all the time, because a lot of times the moon's over here as it zips by. But right on the Ascension Day, and this shows at 9:53. Remember the day of, and this is Jerusalem. Remember it was early in the morning, the 9th hour, which is about 9 a.m. If I'm thinking right. Or no, it was the 3rd hour of the day. Remember they said these men aren't drunk because it's only the 3rd hour. That'd be 9 a.m. So as these believers are getting, as the church, the believers are getting filled with the Holy Spirit, God is doing a download of what the Old Testament really meant into the woman's head, is kind of how I picture that. Now, I don't know, everybody can see something different, but that's what this says to me. So I'm just going to go an hour here. Another hour. A couple more hours. So this is, it's just, all day the disciples are, after they get filled with the Holy Spirit, they're thinking what all these scriptures in the Old Testament pointed to, and this is what Joel spoke of. One other thing before I forget, I had a real hard time. Well, let me get over to that. I'll just show you. Anyway, this is just a little one aspect of this ascension. I'm sorry, the day of Pentecost. And I just thought it was interesting. The Old Testament picture is usually pictured as the moon because it has no light of its own, as it were, but it reflects light from the sun, and it can represent the law, so that when Christ, the woman, she had when Christ was born, the law was under her feet. She had a crown of 12 stars now, the 12 apostles. She's in a new age, a new guiding thing. It's not so much the works of the law or the letter of the law. It's supporting her, as it were. It's not a negative, I don't think, that it's under her feet, but it's just no longer here. But now that she's filled with the Holy Spirit, she understands the truth of all the good truth in the law, because Paul says the law is good if used lawfully. But let's look up. So this is when Ernest Martin says Christ was born. So let's go here. And this is the picture of, I couldn't get the moon under her feet. And this is one that fights me all the time, so I can't get it right side up. But so you see the moon here, and then this little arrow points to the moon. It's a new moon, and that's why it's dark. Let's see, how old is it? It looks like it's a day and a half old. So if we were, remember Rosh Hashanah is the first of Tishri, which this would be if this is the Jewish new moon. Yeah, 1.8 days old, it says. That's usually about when they could see and declare the new moon. So let's fasten your seatbelts. We'll go out here for a second. So yeah, there's just enough light there that maybe they could, from Earth, say, okay, the witnesses, because they'd have the witnesses come and testify whether they could see the initial light of the new moon. But the point I was getting at here is I couldn't get the new moon. It had to be, let me go another day or two. Yeah, one more day, but then it would be 2 3/4 days old. And they didn't call a new moon that late. So Rosh Hashanah would not be on the 3rd day of the month, so it wasn't fitting. So I'm going to go back a day, because they often would call a new moon not when it was over here. If I go where it's only 0.8, 0.9 days, there's probably not going to be enough light, and the moon is up here at her waist. But if you go another day, now I couldn't get the moon under these feet, but that doesn't mean that John the apostle was talking about these feet. They may have been looking at the stars that end the feet of the stick figure. And in that sense, you could say it is under her feet. See what I'm saying? Is that making sense or not? So the moon is right here, hard to see, but it's just, this is pointing to it. And it's not, it'd have to be about down here to say it's under her feet. But if you but that's if you're going by this painting, which we don't know. Anybody could have painted this. And was John referring to, because these are the stars that make up Virgo, and this is one of those where you could kind of say, okay, it's a woman, here's her body, arm, and 2 legs coming down, and the star would be her feet. Well, the moon would be under those if we're calling that her feet. Does that make sense or not?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this was September 11th of 3 BC. I do kind of like that September 11th. What I thought in my calculations, I had that it was 4 BC. Let me see if I have that here. So definitely I can be wrong on anything. Here's what I had. So let me make it dark. And then we'll close with this. So you can see here the moon is under her feet, even if it's the painted feet here. And it's a day and a half old. The sun is, I admit, it's a little lower than, let me see if I go back a few hours. She's clothed with the sun, so I don't know, I guess in certain ways mine doesn't quite work as good as his, because I kind of like the sun up here being more where it's clothing, but here is Mercury to come and resist, and Mars, the war planet, when Christ, if this is Christ's birth, and the moon is under her feet. So anyway, it's one of those two, I think. And let me open one more, because we'll look out ahead and say, is there any time where so possible man-child birth and that's near Rosh Hashanah. Some of them are like 2032, but if you like one that's near, let's go with 2025. I'm not saying this will be it. I kind of don't think it will, but just for fun. So here, and here's Mercury to come and resist again. Venus is here. So the moon, you can see, is kind of under her feet, and she's clothed with the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be, so this is a new moon here. Well, it's 3 days old here, so that, I don't know how I missed that. Let's see, shift, day. Okay, so yeah, I was spacing out there. This doesn't work, because the new moon is up at her waist. It's not, so Rosh Hashanah would be right around here. So that doesn't fit. I think I did a couple of these early on before I was really, let's see this one that is in 2024, just for fun. So you see the moon under her feet. clothed with the sun. There's Mercury again. Kind of funny how it always seems to be around. And so this is a 2.7 days. I can't say I like that. Normally the new moon is called right about when it's a day and 3/4 is when they can see it. The sun's in the way, but yeah, that's would be about here, so it's not really under her feet any which way there. But anyway, I got a bunch more interesting. Oh, here we go, 2027. Let's check that one. Nope. Yeah, because when you come back here where it's about a day and a half old, it's up here at her waist. So I'm going to have to keep looking on that. So anyway, I hope I haven't worn you out with all these, but there's a whole bunch of them in here that are kind of interesting. Well, let me close with this wild comet here. This is with the sun, the new moon, and Mercury in Aquarius. So we're talking, and then Saturn and Neptune near, all while this comet is coming into town. So this will happen in February of 2027. And remember, we're going into the age of Aquarius, so this is kind of interesting that some major signs, you got Mercury right here, you have the new moon, a day and a half old, and Saturn is in Pisces, so, you know, he's watching the Christian age again while this is going on. Let me see what happens if I go hour to hour here with that comet. Well, let's see if I go day to day what happens. Okay, now I'm going to go backwards some days. And now I'll go forward. So it has a, and look, it's right where the sun is. That's kind of interesting. And also the new moon was right here, passing the sun. So I don't know what comet this is. Let's see if I can get it to, oh, it's Soho. See Soho Comet 342P. It's a comet that has a certain cycle. You know, there's going to be signs. And so here on this kind of interesting date, it just happens to be where these things are all in Aquarius, which is the age that we're supposed to be coming into. This comet. And look how it's shining light on Pisces. I don't know, the heavens might be seeing something in all this. I'm just going hour at a time now to see. See how its back end is swinging around? Now it's firing out at Aquila. Anyway, so this will be an interesting comet that comes in. Whether it will be visible from where we are or not is hard to say, but it's definitely going to be visible from somewhere. So yeah, I'm a little over. I will stop screen share. Come back home. Here's us here in Olympia with the sun in Leo just getting ready to set, and Virgo coming up next month. So anyway, I'll stop the share and I will close down. Jeannie, are you out there?
Right here.
Okay, I'll say goodnight.
Okay, I'm on my way.
And goodnight to Lori and Mary Catherine.
Night, Al. Love you.
Mary Catherine, I saw you for a second there. I hope you get some. Hope
Yeah.
you got some good stuff.
You know, my grandson takes correspondence school, and they always make him read everything through first, and then you go just get the basic ideas. Then you go back and start over again, and you get more stuff. So that's what I've got going here for me.
Yeah.
I got a baseline, and when I go back, I'll kind of really, good stuff. Al.
Yeah. It's
No.
great, isn't it? It's so interesting. But
And
I have to scoot. I'm going to my neighbor's for dinner.
Okay, have a good dinner.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
yeah,
Good to
Mary
see
Catherine, I do the same thing. Every time I get through some of this, I see more. So it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and it's nice to get a full picture, kind of like what I've gotten, but not
Yeah,
details. And then I can go back and the details will fit in probably even better than if I
I think so.
time around. Yeah.
And it'll be fun when we all kind of see stuff because everybody will be hitting, oh, what about this? What about that? You know, and
Yeah.
seeing it from different angles, I think will get interesting. So,
Yeah.
but I think there's a lot more for us here. So,
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have a break here in a couple weeks or in another week, and then company starts coming again. So
great. Oh, wow. Okay. We got 1 week.
yeah. Yeah. And then Jonathan starts school, and we've got a bunch of stuff going on too. So yep. Anyway,
Well, Lord bless. Say hi to John, and you have a great week.
all right, you too, Al.
God bless.
Bye bye.